In this video, I'm going to share with you some really useful and time-saving tips and tricks for Blender hard surface that you may not know of. Let's go. So the first tip I'm going to talk to you about is going to be knife in Blender, and I'm going to show you with and without add-ons how to use knife in Blender and what kind of tricks with knife, okay? And remember, if you're a beginner or even intermediate, check out our accelerator course. It's fantastic. Thousands of testimonials. You can check them all on our website. If you click the link in the video description, you're gonna get 40% off the deal. So check it out. It's a very well structured course, which is going to give you very solid foundations going forward in Blender. So let's go to edit mode, and when you want to use a knife, you need to go to edit mode, obviously, and then you're gonna press K on the keyboard and you're gonna slice like this. So click on the edge, click on the other edge, press space, and you're good to go. The problem with cutting like this is that you cannot really see that line going through your mesh. But what if you wanted to cut through it? You need to press K, you click on one edge, then press C to cut through, and then you click on the other edge you want to finish your cut at, and you press space, and this will allow you to cut through the mesh, which is a really cool trick. Now the problem with this tool is that you can't really bevel these edges. So when I wanted to create, for example, like a bevel, bevel here in the middle of this cut, I can't really do this with knife tool. I would need to cut my mesh first like this, okay? And then I would need to apply this, grab this point here, and then, Shift Control B that to create a bevel, okay? With box cutter, you can do this in one go. You need to have a box cutter installed, obviously, and then you press Alt W to activate it, press D, go to End Gone, and then you're going to select your mesh and start slicing like this. And let's just run this here like that. We're gonna press K for knife, so switch to knife, and B for bevel. And now what I can do, I can adjust my bevel type to chamfer or bevel, right? So fillet or bevel actually. And I can scroll my mouse up and down, and I'm gonna be able to see the amount of segments I'm adding, okay? And if you don't see segments, you have to set this up in Hardup. So I'm gonna show you in a minute. So then you click space and you got this cut going through your mesh with bevel already, running on your cut, which is much quicker basically than just, adding bevel afterwards. Now, if you don't see these box cutter notifications, you have to go to Hardups. You have to have Hardups installed. Go to the star here and click this box, which is box cutter notification. Enable that and you're good to go. All right. Now, this cut here brings us to another tool I want to talk to you about, which is basically Manifold extrude. If I wanted to extrude this face here normally in Blender, and I'm gonna press E, you see I'm gonna get this problem, which is gonna be overlapping faces, duplicated geometry. It's an absolute mess, okay? It's total, total mess. So it would take me time to fix this. And there's a tool in Blender which was introduced, I think, in some version, I think it was 3.6, maybe earlier. It's called Manifold extrude. So when you press Alt E, you're going to see some options for extrude, and one of them is extrude manifold. You click that and it behaves very much like punch or punch it in machine tools. So it's going to extrude the face in a way that it's not going to create any additional faces around it. So this is really cool, because it speeds up the way you're going to be kind of, shaping your model with extrusions when you're working with booleans. Now, this brings us to another tip that's going to be creating bevels on tricky surfaces. Let's say we didn't have any of these edges, and in order to clean that very easily, what we can do is go to Hardups Operations in Clean Mesh to remove any unnecessary geometry. So it's going to nuke all these lines that are unnecessary, that do not contribute to the shape of the object, okay? Now let's say I wanted to run a bevel on this edge or this edge, okay? So I wanted to curve it in the same way as it's curved in here. I can't do this because when I go with Control B, you see this happens, right? The bevel is being run along this edge here, and this edge is being beveled properly, but this one, beveled, doesn't have anything to run on, doesn't have any edge to support the bevel. So what you need to do, you need to add an edge here in order to have like a guide edge to support the bevel on this in this corner. So you would need to create a straight line. So obviously you're gonna grab a knife and you're gonna try to, you know, run a straight line. It will never work for you properly. You could align these two using, for example, machine tools. So I could apply this, you know, grab this vert, shift click on this vert, press Alt A and align it, and it's gonna be perfectly aligned. But let's say, you know, you don't wanna have this additional step. And by the way, if you want the machine tools align to work, you would need to actually enable align pi here on the add-ons. So if you go to machine tools, okay, you need to have all these tools enabled in order for them to work. So if your align pi doesn't show, it's because the alignments pi isn't turned on. So you need to enable it, save prefs, and then you can actually use this Alt A align pi, which is very useful, by the way. Okay, so now let's say that you wanted to run this with a knife. So you press K and then you want to run a straight line with a knife. All you need to do is press A. So now when with this enabled, you can clearly see that we can run a perfectly straight line here, and then I can grab you know, either this one or this one, and I can run a bevel here like this. Okay, and all I need to do now is clean all this mess, because we really don't need these faces. So I can hold Control, click on all these faces, press F, and you're good to go. Now we're gonna run into another problem. So let's say you wanted to bevel this. So you're gonna run a bevel on this area. You can see that we have a chamfer. So press 1 with hard ups to run a bevel. We're gonna make this a bit smaller, and we're gonna add a weighted normal modifier to fix the shading. So Q and Alt click on the weighted normal modifier, so this is going to be added in the bottom. But you see that we still have this problem, and this is unavoidable because you simply have this edge here that's going to be colliding, and maybe this one as well is going to be colliding with this bevel. That's a limitation of polygon modeling. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is going to be procedural bevel, as long as you don't have to bring this to, you know, game engine or whatever, because, you know, procedural bevel is a fakery. It only works in cycles, and, you know, it's gonna work for your renders, but it's not gonna work when you export this model unless you're gonna bake it into maps, okay? Which you can probably do much easier in Mammoset Toolbag, and I would recommend it, especially that Mammoset Toolbag now can actually bake bevels, you know, without actually having any low poly, high poly situation, all right? So now let me show you how this works. So I'm going to remove these bevels, and for this one I'm going to be using our add-on, which is called Material Works. And by the way, if you want to get 50% of this deal, if you click on the link in the video description, you're going to get 50% off Material Works, and I suggest you get it. It's a fantastic add-on, and now this add-on supports decals through decal machines, so detailing of your meshes couldn't be any easier. And this coupon is gonna be only valid for 2 days, so you got 48 hours to click on the link in the video description and get our add-on at 50% off. All right, so now let me show you how this works with Material Works. It's really easy. It also supports HDRIs, so you don't have to go to Node Wrangler to set up the shader editor. You can click here on HDRI. This add-on comes with 6 high-end HDRI images, which were created by Alex Sancho, and he created them in Keyshot. So these are studio HDRIs of very good quality, and I really like using them. So you can click here and change. As you can see, I have more of them loaded in, but you get 6 of them when you get the add-on. You also get 50 mats and 25 wear mats. So let me just add you know, some random metal here, maybe half matte steel. Maybe something brighter, let's say with basic steel, okay? And you can see that now we don't have any bevel on this edge, but when I'm gonna click on the bevel, suddenly I got a beautiful bevel running around. You can increase the resolution of this bevel here to 16 samples. You can also change the width holding shift, but I wouldn't overdo this because remember, this is a fake bevel. But this is fantastic for creating bevels on tricky situations when you want to just render your model without having a headache, you know, of fixing topology in this, you know, these problematic areas. So again, 50% off the add-on if you click on the link in next 48 hours. So go ahead and get it. It's a really, really good add-on. So let's grab another example, and I want to show you something else, okay? We're going to be talking about offset. Offset is a really cool tool. Now, you know probably about inset. If you don't know about inset, I'm going to show you how it works. So let's just run a bevel here on these edges with Control B, okay? And this will allow me to, you know, let's just run some bevel here. and maybe some weighted normals, and we're going to select this face and press I to insert it. Now I can insert it, but I cannot offset it, which means I cannot move, you know, this edge here outside the parameter here, which is problematic when you want to add some, you know, geometry outside this edge, right? So what you can do, you can install an extension that's called Edit Mesh Tool. So you go here to Preferences, right? Go to Extensions, because it's a Blender add-on. You're probably gonna see a button here, Connect to, or Get Access Online, or Get Online Access, whatever. Look for the add-on Edit Mesh Tools here and simply click on Install, and you're gonna have this add-on installed. Save preferences and you're good to go. Then when you're in edit mode with this edge selected here, right, when you right click, you're gonna see this add-on here, Mesh Tools, and you see this option here, Offset Edges, right? Here in the bottom, you're gonna see a menu. If you unfold it, you see you got some options. So for example, first of all, holding shift, we can change the, you know, the distance of the offset, but you can also change the angle, and you can also flip it. And now, for example, what I can do is, you know, nuke this face. And by the way, this edge, since it was created in edit mode, it's gonna be the integral part of this mesh, which means it's one object, right? So I can very easily grab these two edges and bridge them. Now for bridging, we're gonna be entering an area of another tool, which is called Loop Tools. So again, you have to go back to Preferences, Extensions, and you need to install an extension called Loop Tools, which also comes with Blender. And Loop Tools has something called Bridge. I rarely use this one because I think bridge with machine tools is better, and I'll show you why in a minute. But if you click here, right click here, and you have two edges selected, which basically have matching verts, so you have matching number of verts on both edges, then you can bridge them like this. Sometimes, occasionally, you may have a problem with bridging, and the bridging is gonna be kind of skewed and inconsistent, which is why I honestly prefer to use machine tools for this, because all I need to do is press 2. It's much quicker, so select two edges, press 2, and I'm done. And in order for this to work with machine tools, you need to have another option here enabled on the machine tools, which is called Smart Edge. So enable this, and you can simply press 2 on your keyboard to connect these two edges, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. And then obviously you can still keep modeling here and changing your shape to whatever you want. And there you go, you know, you can create stuff like this, which normally would be a little bit difficult to achieve, okay? Another tip I can give you is when you, for example, are working in subdivision surface. So let's say that you're creating a subdivision surface model from a Boolean surface. So let's say you have a Boolean here running on this cube, and, you know, the model could be a bit more complicated. Let's set some mirror with hard ups. Let's run a smart apply here. Let's remove this and remove this cutter, and now we have this mesh, okay? So we have this mesh here. We wanted to apply subdivision to it by pressing Ctrl 2, and you can see that our mesh is gonna collapse because we don't have any supporting loops on these hard edges. We need control loops on this mesh in order to subdivide it. Now, if I wanted to run edges here, it's going to be very difficult because it's an n-gon, so I cannot really run loops on this. I would need to basically either run knife cuts or manual loops and connect them with edges. It's a lot of work. So the way you select the edges is simple. You select one of these edges, then select similar, select by sharpness, which is going to select all the sharp edges. You Ctrl B that, scroll down, scroll up one level to have 3 segments, press P on your keyboard, and then you can actually flex your mesh to 90 degrees. Then you can press A to adjust the width of this bevel. So what you're doing here, you're simply creating a bevel that's equidistant from all these edges along all the sharp edges on the cube, which will create a very clean subdivision corners for this particular model. Now you will need to fix a few things, like for example, you're gonna have to fix you know, corners like that. This is unacceptable. We have this kind of a shape here, which is not gonna work well in Sub-D. By the way, if you want to learn more about Sub-D, I highly recommend you grab our Sub-D course. Again, I'm gonna give you 50% off coupon for next 48 hours if you're gonna click on the link in the video description. But this course will not only give you very solid foundations for Sub-D for hard surface specifically, but in that course I'm using add-ons. You know, it's very unique to see a course on Subd when actually someone uses add-ons. It's very efficient, very quick. I'm using hard ops, box cutter, mesh machine, machine tools, everything. Paid add-ons, free add-ons. It's an add-on fest, but it's going to give you a workflow that's very fast, and in my opinion, it's the fastest way to create hard surface in Blender when you want to, you know, work in Subdivision. Okay. So now here, if I wanted to solve this problem, I would just run K, then press C, then press A, cut through, then K, and run from here, press again C to cut through A, and you're gonna have these lines going through. I'm going to mirror this to the other side with hard ops. So that's done, and now all I need to do is connect this corner here. So what we could do, we could either run it to this corner, or we could simply create a quad, or we could simply solve it this differently. But I'm just gonna run, you know, a cut here, and we're gonna be good to go. I'm going to apply this, just multiply this, and also I'm going to mirror it to the other side of the bottom because it can be better fixing the bottom. So again, multiply, and now I got my mesh sorted. Okay, so watch this. If I'm going to apply Subdivision now to this mesh, it's going to work. Okay, so if I'm going to press Ctrl 2 to subdivide it, everything is fine. Even Ctrl 3, you got a very clean subdivision on your mesh, and you don't have to worry. Now, obviously, if I was doing this properly, I would, you know, fix this. I would create a much cleaner and much more even topology on this mesh to create, you know, more evenly sized quads. Probably I wouldn't connect it this way. I would, you know, rethink this connection here, or you could just run you know, a cut here. Even with box cutter works in edit mode. Press K, slice through, and you're done. So you see, when you work with add-ons, you gain this power of speed, which is essential for Subdivision, because Subdivision, you know, is very time consuming to begin with. So you don't wanna, you know, you don't wanna make your life harder than it should be. Okay, you can run 2 loops in here, and this is going to be much more balanced mesh, you know, in terms of Subd. Obviously we don't need to run it in here, we can run it in here, and we can combine these two together. And then last but not least, you need to fix this issue here. So we need to solve this corner by simply removing these 2 edges, and everything is peachy, and that looks clean to me. So the same thing should be happening on the other side. So I can mirror this to both sides, holding shift with hard ops, and you know, and we're good to go. And obviously I will need to apply the mirror, so I can move the mirror above Subdivision and apply it. And there you go, my mesh is fixed. Just remember that when you're going to enter this profile tool, right, whatever bevels you're going to be running on your mesh now, they're going to be always perpendicular. So you have to press P again, move your mouse to the left click, and then you have to open this panel here. You're going to have to change the bevel shape here to something that's going to fit whatever you're trying to achieve. Could be 0.5, could be 0.75, whatever you want. But you know, you will be able to adjust it in here. I think 0.5 probably going to be better. It's going to be more rounded bevel. Okay. So there you go, that's how you do it. And then when you're going to be running this on another cube, right, the bevel setting is going to carry over. So if you want to go to this, you know, perpendicular bevel, you got to press P again and flex it, and then press A to adjust the width. Okay, that's how easy it is. All right. Another tool that's really useful, it's a clamp overlap. So let's say I have this cube here, and I'm going to have to apply scale because, you know, our scale at the moment is not uniform. You see, it's distorted on Z-axis, should be 1, 1, 1 here. So when I'm going to be running bevels on this, the bevel's going to look very wonky. Yeah, let me just adjust it one more time to 0.5. Okay, so you see it's uneven and it's kind of flat. It doesn't look really good. So I'm going to have to Control A this and apply scale. And now when I'm going to run a bevel, it's going to be, you know, very nice and smooth. So if I'm going to grab these 2 edges and run them like this, so I want to create kind of like a rounded corner. I can't do that because my bevel is overshooting. So what you want to do is press C for clamp. You can see in the bottom here, see here, clamp. And it's going to, you know, sort of and the bevel will not overshoot when the 2 bevel edges meet. Okay. The problem with this one is that you need to remember every time you run this, you will end up with a double edge. so you need to nuke it. The way I do that, I just press 3 with machine tools and it's gonna remove unnecessary edges. For this to work, you need to go to again to machine tools menu and enable this cleanup option. In fact, if you want to, you should probably copy my settings here. I'm not really using this one, to be honest. But the otherwise I'm using all these tools, sometimes other tools like align, whatever, but these are the go-to tools when I'm installing my machine tools. Okay, so we cleaned this up and now you got this really nice bevel, and you can have fun with this one. Let me show you something else with bevels. This is something you should pay attention to. It's really important. Let's grab bevels here, and let's say we wanted to insert this face in, and you see eventually when I'm gonna go too deep, my bevel is going to overshoot on this, on itself. It's gonna invert and flip inside out, and my geometry is gonna be distorted. Sometimes you don't see problems like this, especially when it's minor, when you're gonna have a tiny clipping like that. You may miss this when you're modeling very quickly. So my suggestion would be to turn on a function that's going to allow you to see flipped geometry. Okay, so click here and turn this on. Now the problem with this feature here is that in your case, most likely you're going to see everything in purple. The reason why you're seeing everything in purple is because of the settings here on the themes and 3D viewport. You got this alpha slider here on the face orientation set to 1. So what happens is that the Blender shows you all the correct orientation of faces and also incorrect orientation of faces. When I save preferences, I'm going to grab this face and I'm going to remove this. See what happens here. The purple and red show two different sides of one face. The face in Blender has two sides, inner side and outer side. If it's purple, it's correctly oriented and it's fine. The mesh is going to be manifold. If this face is going to be flipped, so let me go to Alt-N and flip this face. This is a flipped face, and this is going to cause all kinds of problems, including bevels. So if I'm going to, let me just turn off this psychedelic feature for a second. If I'm going to run a bevel on this one, you see what happens? This happens. The face is flipped, so the bevel is flipped, yeah? You can't really sometimes see these things, especially when your bevel is going to be really tiny, right? But if you're going to have this feature enabled, especially with this alpha slider down, all you can see is the red faces. People always ask me in my videos, how the hell do you see all the red faces, but you don't see the blue ones? Well, that's the answer, okay? You need to slide this down to 0, save prefs, you're good to go. So now with this, flipped faces turned on permanently, you can always tell when your faces are flipped. So you can, select everything out and recalculate outside, and you're good to go. And you can, close this one and you're peachy. Now, this problem will not fix itself unless you're going to be using add-ons like Mesh Machine. By the way, links to all the add-ons are in the video description. So if I'm going to select these two edges, go to Y menu with Mesh Machine and unfuck this, boom, then it's fixed. And, don't even try to do this with vanilla Blender because you can't. So, get machine tools and get Mesh Machine because these add-ons are fantastic. Let me just apply the mirror here. So operations, multiply, and there you go. Our problem is fixed. So this is how, you work these situations. And trust me, this situation is quite common. So when you're going to be working, even faster with add-ons or without add-ons, doesn't matter. This will happen to you. So at least you know how to fix that, okay? And the last tip I'm going to give you is a very simple one, but very powerful one. When you work in Blender, you want to have cavity turned on. When you add a cube in Blender by default, you can see that the edges are very difficult to distinguish. So you can see the edges clearly here, but good luck seeing the edge between these two faces. It's almost as if it was one face. Edges in Blender are infinitely sharp. Doesn't matter how close you zoom in, the edge is going to be sharp. There's no bevel. So you need to fake the bevel before you add the bevel, and that's what cavity does. So when you go here to cavity, and you can, by the way, keep it on default settings, you can see there is a tiny edge popping up here, and this is going to solve your problem. I do it with hard ups, Alt V, and I enable cavity, and I'm done. And obviously you need to save it in preferences to have this function turned on when you're gonna launch your Blender. And this will do two things. Obviously, it's gonna be, highlighting the hard to see edges, but more importantly, it's gonna help you to design. Being able to determine where the edges, where the highlights are, where the shadows are is very important, because it's gonna help you to see the design much better. You need to understand how your design and design language presents itself from different angles when you model in order to create a well-balanced model. Cavity is essential, and I wouldn't model without it. In addition to this one, you don't need bevels, and we know that if you're gonna have a lot of booleans in your scene, and they're live booleans, which means you don't apply them, you keep them on your mesh, you have a lot of models, a lot of objects. In addition, you got bevel on top of this, your UI is gonna slow down. So cavity is kind of like a fake bevel, sort of like the the bevel baking, remember, with our add-on Materialworks. That's going to allow you to see that edge much better and simply create better models. All right, that's all the tips I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the video and learned something useful. And remember, if you're a beginner or even intermediate, check out our accelerator course. It's fantastic. Thousands of testimonials. You can check them all on our website. If you click the link in the video description, you're going to get 40% off the deal. So check it out. It's a very well structured course, which is going to give you very solid foundations going forward in Blender. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.